And once I believe that they will do very well in Berlin, I think that it's going to propel them into that top 4, top 5 potentially.
They have got an insane roster, and so far, everything is gluing together. You look at these guys, you've got so much experience.
Welcome to Dexerto's Curveball Power Rankings show presented by DJ Esports. DJ Esports is the world's premier all-crypto esports betting site providing real-time odds on professional games. And when we're talking about professional games, we're looking at some of the professional teams and understanding who we think is the top 10 in Valorant right now. And it can't just be me making this decision because it would probably be a very terrible biased list. But Mitch is also very biased, but we've got fRoD to make sure we even things out. Well, Mitch, I'm going to start with you, mate. A lot has changed since we did the first one.
Yeah. The whole scene is looking a whole lot different, and if anything, it's only benefited EMEA.
Oh, here we go again, fRoD. Like, I'm just gonna let you talk because you've got to somehow shut this idiot up every now and again.
I mean, I agree, because the thing is with EMEA, it's something that CIS has come in strong. I mean, even Turkey, they're just taking it to a different level, and they didn't really have that presence in the previous rankings or the previous Masters. So for me, this is something that I do have to agree with Mitch, but at the same time, NA is also looking very strong, right? Like, we do have some new teams coming in, 100 Thieves, making that sort of name for themselves, revisiting, and we have other contenders kind of getting ready. Unfortunately, we have 3 teams going out there, but there's a lot of teams heating up out here that, you know, NA is going to definitely start turning it up a lot more there.
Now, I'm going to start going through this, right? Because we all come together, we have this discussion of where we want to put the teams and how we're going to place them out. It's very hard compared to what we would say do in other games right now because there's not a lot of international competition, right? We have to wait for us to get to the big events in order to try and see it. And then also it's the limited teams like you're mentioning, fRoD. But I'm going to start here on our 10th place team with G2 because I think it was, right, when we started to learn about the rumors of we saw the changes that might be coming through to G2, we all did say that actually looks like a scary lineup which could find some success, and they found themselves straight away up into 10th, and I would say they probably did better than what I would even considered was possible at the start. With definitely capable players here, Mitch, but I would say there was a couple of moments where you think maybe they'll need a bit more time, you know, to get ready and get themselves into the groove to be a top 10 team.
Yeah, I think you could see that. With how young this roster is, the performance that they've managed to field, I mean, the only teams they've lost to really are the other ones that are competing on the international stage that are proving to be on top of the EMEA region. So they haven't really had any major slip-ups when it comes to their play. They came close to being knocked out, but barely made it in. And for such a newly formed roster, even with the star power that they have on that, I think it was a pretty good performance from them overall so far. And now they have plenty of time to practice, to really refine themselves and prove themselves on the international stage when it comes to playing in Berlin.
And what I like about G2 is that typically when you have these new rosters that come together, you have like two angles they can kind of go. They either have that honeymoon phase that they just start off really hot, or you have other teams that maybe they have that slow progression, but they're at least progressing. And that's kind of where I see G2 as a team that's every moment getting stronger and stronger. Granted, they haven't hit their peak yet we haven't had to see that. Hopefully we can, but I'm guessing that as we continue on, they're going to continue to get stronger. And I'm just assuming that they're going to start, you know, making some of these long runs. We have to see it though, because right now they're still just kind of biting at that last spot towards the EMEA side. So I kind of want to see them break that hurdle and break into that top 2, top 3, which will then, you know, propel them even higher. But they're a team that they were on the outside looking in for a while. And this kind of core that they brought over from Heretics and everything, like they're just taking it to new heights in that slow progression, which I'm very much enjoying.
And the thing is, what we know with G2 with any game, right? Carlos will make whatever changes needed and splash the cash in order to find a team that will hit that level. So ready to see what they can do going forward. On to our 9th place team. We've gone with Acend in here, fRoD. Now, obviously, there was a bit of debate when we were discussing this one, so give me your reasonings behind this.
Well, I think that they're a team that definitely deserves to be there because they were one of those teams that, in my opinion, if NA had another spot, they were going to be there. And they were just one of those teams that they have been making actual deep runs and wins from that team. Like, at least when you look at the teams out from the outside looking in from NA side, they've made the moves necessary. Def has been a massive pickup for them. Zekin was a huge pickup. Yep. I mean, the thing is that everything from them has turned around. Like, they may have done that honeymoon phase a little bit and it's going strong, but I think that they have that experience, their coach as well, the whole staff around them. If they can keep them focused and keep that kind of magic they had going, I could see them going very high. And like I said, they would have been out there if we had another spot, but, you know, unfortunately we can't all be out there to represent, but they're a team that, you know, rightfully deserves and had enough wins to crack that sort of ranking, in my opinion.
Obviously, when it comes to North American spots, they get the 3 versus EMEA EMEA being the superior region, we get 4 slots. But I 100% agree that Acend should be in there in this top 10 roster because, well, I mean, they came 4th. So if NA was good enough to warrant 4 spots, they would be making it to that event.
True.
You're agreeing with that? If NA are good enough, fRoD, you don't want to like make sure Mitch has to pay the price.
Yeah, we have to give Brazil 2 slots, you know, just so we can get some good teams.
Oh,
yeah,
dear.
exactly. I mean, the thing is, unfortunately, we don't have enough like that. But I mean, I'm telling you, if we could have 6 teams out there, they'd all be very, very competitive, if not even more.
Yeah, amongst themselves, for sure.
See.
Yeah, just wouldn't like to see them play EU teams.
Well, talking about EU teams, Mitch, our next one coming into 8th place, we've put Liquid in there right now. And Liquid certainly did show up, but I would say that we're still like, I don't know, maybe it's me, Mitch, but maybe I hold them on a higher level because I have a lot of faith in Sliggy and I like the way he thinks about the game. Maybe I'm a bit more harsh on them in that sense. I think Ape's very respectable, but I'm still waiting to see, you know, like a Liquid that is all dominant because they suffered at the very beginning of the game, you know, when it was them all coming together and G2 was just winning everything. Then they've certainly made a resurgence. Obviously, finishing above Fnatic is obviously a huge accomplishment for these guys. But I'm just looking and I still see this team and think, come on, I want this Liquid like full dominance, full force going in.
Yeah, I mean, it really sucks for Liquid as well, though, when you think about how they went out. The teams that they lost to along the way were of a decently high caliber. Na'Vi, just a newly formed roster coming in there, really surprised us and took that win. I know that, obviously, we know Liquid kind of start slow sometimes. Once they hit that lower bracket, they were running. They demolished Oxygen. They dealt with Forza pretty easily. And then they end up going down to the team that ended up winning. So, you know, the fact that they met Gambit in an elimination game was incredibly unlucky for them, as I think if things had panned out a little bit differently, they could definitely be in the top 4 right now. They could be competing in Berlin 100% if they didn't have to take Gambit.
Yeah, and unfortunately, the thing is that we do have to judge them harshly because they are such a good team. They have such insane talent. The organization is similar to G2 in that sense that they're going to do whatever it takes to win and be successful. So I'm assuming it's probably a massive disappointment to not be at Berlin, but at the same time, they're one of those teams that I think that just based on some of these other teams just dominating and maybe they didn't have like a smooth qualifier run, just kind of made hurdles that they could not overcome. And similar to G2 in a way, it's like once you put yourself in those kind of holes, it's very tough. And, you know, once the qualification spots are getting very tight, I mean, this is why we're not even talking about Fnatic, right? And they're a team that probably could have been in something like this, but if they can't even get past the qualifiers in that very tough qualification stage, then, you know, we have to judge them harshly like that, especially when they've done so well in some of the other tournaments.
Yeah, they made their own bet as well. Really, if they had beaten Na'Vi in the first place, they would have ended up going to the other side of the bracket. They would have ended up facing G2, and that would have been a very tight game. But I'd give Liquid the edge when we see them in Berlin. But that one hiccup put them on the same side of the bracket as Gambit, and at that point, you know, not many people have been able to beat Gambit.
What do we think about this like CIS team in terms of the Na'Vi one coming through, right? Because we knew what Gambit could do anyway, but like the Na'Vi one, when I looked at that result, Mitch, I was shocked and stunned. I thought, okay, it's a legit win for Na'Vi in here, but I would be saying that that's pretty poor form from Liquid at the time.
Yeah, but you look at some of the guys that are on that Na'Vi roster, and the main thing that's held these guys back in the past has always just been their English for the most part. Like now that they're in a group where they can comfortably speak the one unified language and they're not going to be sort of out of their comfort zone in the communication front, they can really get the maximum out of their skill. And you've got players like SSK, like DinksJ, like Arch. I mean, these are guys that, James, you and I looked at in the inception of Alliance. We wanted to trial these guys. We did trial them, and again, for the same reason that I've heard from many different teams, that these guys, you know, they get in, but then something just doesn't quite click right. And now that they've got that kind of Russian speaking background to play with, I think that just absolutely propels them into a really strong position within the scene. So a surprise win over Liquid, most definitely, but I wouldn't say it's necessarily a tragedy for Liquid to lose to them, especially because it was a tight enough series, considering the caliber of players and the experience that Na'Vi have as individuals. But it is definitely a very strong performance considering how new they are.
When you have those new teams like that, they can kind of form these upsets. Unfortunately, sometimes they may not make these deep runs, but they're a team that will upset and beat anybody on like any given Sunday kind of thing. It's just you kind of want them to be able to put it together for a whole entire weekend. And if they can find that consistency, you know, there could be very dangerous. But there's, you know, someone that you have to respect every single time that you play against them, because you never know what kind of version you're going to get of them. And if you get their best game, it's going to be very tough to beat them, as they've shown.
Now, fRoD, in 7th place, we're going on to Envy out here. Now, Obviously, we actually did discuss them a bit, not on it was one of the previous shows, right? We went through it and was saying about what could be within this team, but they've finished above some very notable names within the NA scene. You've got to give them a lot of credit for that.
Yeah, I mean, in the last time we talked, they didn't even have Ye, for example. So I think that so much has changed with them when they've been able to make such a massive pickup in one of the most talented players that we have in this country. Right now, getting that kind of firepower is making Envy an even more dangerous team. And then having him actually show up with like a week of practice and them have this performance that they did to be able to qualify and make it to Berlin, I think it just speaks to not only him as a player, but the whole entire team. You know, FNS, their coach Mike, you know, everyone's like putting in that work to incorporate someone like this. And in my opinion, I had them ranked even higher because I definitely think that they are. But I understand that if they've not maybe cracked that, you know, that broken out that top 4 barrier in some cases. And I know we have Mitch, you know, kind of weighing down like what we ultimately put together in a ranking. But I'm kind of happy with this because at least this puts them in the conversation. And once I believe that they will do very well in Berlin, I think that it's going to propel them into that top 4, top 5 potentially.
Yeah, they're in what I would call the NA side of the bracket, down towards the lower half. But, you know, we had to make some compromises along the way, so we'll give Envy 7.
So Envy sit down there in 7th place. We're going to continue on with the rest of the rankings in just a second, but I've got to remind all you guys at home that Curveball is presented by DJ Esports. And you guys, you can earn up to 800,000 USDT in the free-to-enter DJ Esports World Prediction Series. Sign up on the link below in the description and get 400 DJT for free, but it is only for a limited time. And with the limited time we have left on the show, we need to keep going, and we're going to now go on to our 6th place team, Acend. This is a team that I've been a big fan of, and not only just what they show in game, but it's also the journey this team has been on, right? The players themselves and how they've come together. It's Acend here in this 6th spot.
Yeah, and it might be surprising to see them down outside the top 5, considering some of the performances that these guys have fielded, not just in qualifier events, but in Masters events as well. These are definitely a staple of the European scene. A little bit of Turkish representation in there as well, as I'm sure everybody knows by this point. So yeah, I think Acend, they definitely deserve a spot up on this list. Probably a little bit higher if we just put some more NA teams down there. But I gotta say, the performances that they've had have kind of been outshone by some of the other EMEA teams because they've had some struggles. There was definitely a conversation. And indeed, I think the majority of people expected Acend to end up winning the entirety of the EMEA playoffs. So the fact that we've seen them go out at a relatively early stage it kind of surprised us seeing them in the lower bracket.
Yeah, and what I like about Acend is that, you know, when you look at teams, the number one goal is to be consistent. And, you know, sometimes if your best days are your great days and your bad days, like you really want them not to be as bad. What I like about Acend is that they're always going to be a good team. Now, I want them to be that consistently great team that they can just go and show out and dominate teams. But I think a lot of it is because you kind of have a lot revolving around cNed, and he's such a good player. He's such a talent that he will take over the game and he will show out like that. But if everyone else on the team can kind of be firing on all cylinders while he's doing that, I mean, they could completely dominate and wipe out a team. So it's, for me, it's one of these things that it's consistency across the board. And if they could be consistently great, not just consistently good, then right there, they're going to, you know, maybe make the top 3. I mean, because they all have the talent there. They also have the teamwork and they have that experience, which is not that many other teams can say. And they've at least been beating some of these teams on a higher basis. I think that they're one of the teams similar to Gambit that should have been at the last, you know, big event. But unfortunately, they were one of those teams that due to circumstance or whatever, they didn't make it. But like I said, they've been consistent. And that's something that, you know, you have to give them credit because as metas keep changing and going, they're getting stronger and stronger. And that's credit to some of the players as well.
Yeah, massively so. And one thing I'll touch on, right, Mitch, you've probably seen some of these comments. I'm not sure about you, fRoD, but people talk about Acend and they're like, oh, it's only cNed. But I'm thinking, like, are these people even watching the game? Because this is definitely a team that performs well together. They've definitely, it's not like just like send cNed and if he can have some success and if it doesn't work out, oh, okay, we lose the round. It's not that type of a team to me, Mitch. And it really kills me when I'm seeing these comments. I'm like, people, are you even watching the same game?
Yeah, we've had this conversation a couple of times and looking at some of the breakdowns and analysis of the rounds and how they play out. And you look at some of the guys like Bone Cold. I think he's the only player other than cNed, unless I'm missing something, but who managed to actually get a player of the match vote over on Twitter. And that was only because cNed commented and retweeted it and said, don't vote for me, vote for Bone Cold. And I think he got like 30 kills. And even then it was super close between him and cNed just because of the fandom that's there. He's obviously the the staple player, but you look at the impact that someone like Bone Cold has, even when he's towards the bottom of the scoreboard and setting his team up. I was speaking with Crimson, their team manager, about this and saying that, you know, I don't think it's true anymore that this is a team that plays around cNed so much as it's a team that plays around cNed, but cNed plays around them as well. They have that little bit of a two-way street going on, which is why they've elevated to such a high level in recent memory.
Yeah, when you have a team that is actually a team, it's not really just centered around one person. Like, just because that person may get the flashier plays or the higher kills on the scoreboard does not mean that everything is centered around him. And obviously there are moments, you know, maybe he has ultimate or whatever, you want him to go do his thing, but the majority of the time he doesn't have that, right? So what gives them those consistent victories and just them winning the majority of the rounds and setting him up for success is his team, not just him, you know? So that's what I like about them, that they're just improving as a team. Him as a player is obviously getting better, but everyone else is improving drastically as well.
Massively so. Now we're getting into our top 5 though, and this is where it starts to get quite interesting. We're not at the bit where we'll tilt Mitch just yet, but we'll get there soon enough. In 5th place, it's Super Massive Blaze. Now, fRoD, I'm going to start with you on this one because cNed is one Turkish guy. Well, this is a whole team that came through and they showed us more than what I ever expected. Like, I thought they would kind of get to one point, hit a brick wall, and then struggle, but they showed it, and they made it all the way to the grand finals. Yeah,
I mean, they're easily the most impressive team that I watched in the whole EMEA tournament. Obviously, they didn't win. I've been a fanboy of Gambit for the whole time, so I'm not surprised they won. But for me, just seeing Supermassive Blaze, just the way that they play, the way that they have retakes, the way that they communicate. Obviously, I don't speak Turkish, but you could tell by the way that they retake, they're pinging, they're taking certain angles, and they're holding certain moments that their communication is extremely efficient. And just the way that they play, their teamwork, you know, Power bringing some of that experience from Heretics.
Yes.
I mean, this is like a super team, you know what I'm saying? And in their region, and what I'm proud to, like, in a way to see is that these guys are, I'm sure, wearing that on their sleeves, and they're going to pour their heart and souls into this game. And that's something that, you know, you kind of want to see from some of these regional based teams. And it's like, you know, this is a full Turkish team. They're doing it for themselves, for their country and everything. And you could just very see it, their passion in the way that they play, the way they frag out. And it's not just one, you can't even just, I mean, obviously, you know, you have some other players that kind of have their moments, Izzy and all that. But for me, it's just all of them across the board are having their moments and fragging out, playing very well, and you don't really have any weak links. And to me, that shows a very solid team.
Yeah, obviously we know Russ from back in the day over on BBL. He was actually the player that was brought in to replace cNed. And you've got players like Pora, who's been around the EU scene for quite a while.
Yes.
And this is the reason that he was actually leaving his previous team, moving over back to the Turkish squad and wanting to build this super team there. Turco, one of the best clutchers that we have in EMEA overall. He's played more games than anybody else. And along the way, he's picked up, I think, like the 4th highest clutch percentage in the whole tournament, 29% of 1vx's. This guy wins out. Izzy's right behind him on 26. The clutch potential on this roster is absolutely massive. And Izzy, pound for pound, kind of matching up with cNed right now, which is concerning considering we know Russ was able to put up those numbers in the past as well. Like, there is so much potential on this SMB Supermassive Blaze team. They have got an insane roster, and so far everything is gluing together. And another team that is very young, very newly put together.
Yes.
And so the question, and it's the same as with Gambit, when they refine their play style a little bit further, when they move a little bit further into the sort of, when they add that extra bit of depth rather, they are going to be insanely scary.
I would say as well, for me with SMB, is like, I was very worried when you look at this roster that maybe some of these players will get picked off, like they're good enough and they don't stay together. But I'm happy so far that like we get to see them stay. Yeah, like because you lose one player and you see like things crumble. But I'm just really happy that we got a Turkish team that has shown they can compete at the best level within the EMEA region, right? And we know it's not easy in there. So I'm just proud to see a team that's come through and stick it out and survive losing your star player and still being able to rebuild. We don't often see it, boys. We don't often see it at all.
I mean, what you're saying there is exactly what happened to cNed, right? To BBL. They lost cNed, they brought Russ in, and they never reached the same peak again.
Yeah, we did that Ignition Series event, right? And it was like, we're just looking at cNed every single time, and then he disappears, and we didn't see BBL like get anywhere close to it, right? There was no hope. Yeah, they just vanished. So I didn't want to see that happen again. Like it's painful, but it's sadly the nature of the game. But it shows that there's a deep talent pool within Turkey. So yeah, probably keep an eye on it.
And also some loyalty too, man, because sometimes when these guys can maybe turn down some different offers or turn down different opportunities, kind of build something with themselves, like that builds a lot of loyalty, and those things go a long way to kind of build that chemistry within the team. So I really, kind of value a lot of what those guys are building out there.
Yeah, massively so. Now moving into the top 4 position in here, and it is our favorites coming out of Korea. It's Vision Strikers, and they obviously come with a different face, different players in there from when we know them from the past, but they still dominate their region. They still have Can Yang, Mr. Man, standing behind them, looking after them,
Yep, big Can.
Been doing it for as many years as possible. It didn't matter what game it was, and still bringing some of the old heads along with him. fRoD, Vision Strikers, they are Korea at this point.
Yeah. I mean, they're the best team out there. I'm sure Mitch will probably touch more on it, but having Lakia there is just something that's just massive. I mean, this team is they're built different out there. I think that, unfortunately, they didn't make it out to Iceland, but I think that's because it just shows you how strong that region is.
Yeah.
And it took that event for them to have their first loss. And it's just one of these things that like this team, they've learned so much. They're trying to overcome whatever it was and build for the long term and be the most dominant team in their region. They're going out there, they're constantly showing it. What I'm excited is the fact that this tournament, at least in comparison to Iceland, is going to have a lot more teams. I think a lot better teams just overall in general. And it's going to allow for a lot more games, a lot of different regions to clash. And I think that we're going to be a little bit surprised and pleasantly surprised to kind of see how Vision Strikers does against the world, and then kind of see, because they're the one team here that they're, aside from Sentinels, they're used to winning.
Yes.
So their expectation going into the major is to get first place, regardless of where they're from. So I'm kind of curious to see how that mindset goes and their approach day to day while the tournament is live.
One of the only concerning factors I have on this team is the fact that Lakia obviously has been brought over to Vision Strikers, but we've seen him be the player that's swapped in and out, which is insanely peculiar.
Yeah.
Even in the finals that they played against FAC, he was playing a Sky, which is a little, I'm not going to say it's out of his wheelhouse. I'm sure he's more than capable, but the comfort ground and what we know him for being so impactful on is that Sova, is that Raze. And if you've got RB in there who's going to be consistently fielded for all of these games, it seems like almost they've bought him up just to be like, all right, we like our team, we believe in our team, but we don't want any of you to have him. Like that's a dangerous thing. And we're talking
You're not allowed to play
like a monopoly of talent.
Exactly right. Buy all the players in Korea, you're going to be the best team. And they have 7 players on the roster right now, technically registered to play. They have I think 3 coaches. This is an insanely deep roster. Vision Strikers have obviously got some pretty deep pockets as well. And when it comes to the performance and the impact that it can have, I want to truly believe that I'm looking at these challengers stages in Korea and thinking, all right, they're actually concealing Lakia. They're working on integrating him properly into the roster, and then we're going to see him become a mainstay and some of the other players go in a little bit of a circulation. It's also just worth mentioning that I don't think Buzz gets nearly enough credit, because while you have conversations about cNed, you'll have them about all these different Oppers and Jet players when it comes to Europe. When we look towards Korea, Lakia is definitely going to be a big point. But people don't talk about Buzz that much, and this guy's incredible. He's one of the highest rated players in Korea right now. He's been putting up numbers, and in that final, he's absolutely slaying them. I think it's going to be a pretty big challenge for him, though, matching up to someone like cNed, someone like if Russ was to pick it up, or Izzy, for example. He'll have a tough battle.
Yeah, and like you said, when they have such a big roster too, that's also going to pose a different type of element, because they have to basically implement everybody, and someone like Lakia deserves to be in there every single game. I mean, obviously you kind of make that argument for everyone, but he's such a talent that he changes the game by himself. So I think that if they find a way to get him in there every time and they're working him in, I think that's wishful thinking in a sense. Like, and I really want that to happen. But if they kind of keep this mindset of having a big roster, swapping in, swapping out, and kind of this is their mindset, then, I'm not really hopeful to kind of see, I don't think they're going to be able to find that consistency to beat those teams, because you kind of need that talent to have that experience day in, day out, scrim in, scrim out with all of his boys. And if there's so much going in and out, there's not that consistency between the 5 and the server day in, day out.
I mean, so far we haven't seen any of these 6, 7 and so on rosters actually compete at a high level when it comes to EMEA or North America, at least. I know going to be some Southeast Asia fans out there going, yeah, well, actually, this team is a 9-man roster. It's a little bit different out there. Things are done differently in Southeast Asia. You know, we decide who goes to Masters based on round difference. But when it comes to EMEA and NA, we've seen a bunch of teams attempt this, and it just hasn't worked. Having these deep rosters, even just that extra man that you swap in and out, like Heretics did it with Nisao for a little bit, and they didn't continue doing it, and they didn't bring anyone else in to fill those boots.
That's not even a good example of a roster like that. I'm glad you mentioned SEA though, because it reminds me of that event we did where there was like that roster with 8 players?
Yeah, it was 8 or 9. Yeah, I remember they pulled up the roster.
The graphic came up.
Family, what's going on?
The graphic came up, and we were like, "Have they just added the coach and manager?" Like, and we had to check, and I was like, "No, they legit have 8, 9 players." Like, okay, cool. Like, I guess this is how we're doing things. Like, why not? It was early part of the game, so maybe they were trying to work out like what they actually wanted to do. But I think it was the Thailand team.
Interesting.
Yeah, man.
You're sat there going, never mind who is he gonna play Raze, who's gonna play, and what are they gonna play? Like,
agents don't matter at that point. Which player do you want in? That's the next one.
Yeah, it's so many.
All right, let's get into our top 3 before I derail us too far on this. And in third place, it is our winners of the EMEA region. It's Gambit coming on through. Now, fRoD, I'm going to let you start, because you said you're a fan of these teams, but you didn't allow them to go further up the rankings in here, mate. So we've got Gambit down in third place, and Nats, my God, like watching him this weekend, this guy is the real deal, and he don't move. Man has no emotion.
Yeah. I mean, Gambit is crazy good. I mean, just even like seeing them in the previous qualifiers and previous tournaments, like you could tell how good of a team this is. I mean, for me, I want to see how they go against NA. Obviously, I think that they could, be higher, be lower. But for me, I'm just glad that they're in that top 3, top 5 area and just progressing more and more. And I think that they're kind of at least within the range of where they deserve to be based on how well they've been playing and how good they've been. This is also a team that has basically dominated their region. They did not make it to the previous major. So for me, these are guys that just talent across the board. Their strategies seem very well refined, and what I like about them too is that they have a very good change of pace, because a lot of teams typically like this like slow default style and drain the clock a little bit, which I get it, and that kind of like Navi style like in the old Counter-Strike days and stuff like that. What I like about these guys is they may have that, but when they switch it up and they go fast, they hit hard, and they have this excellent teamwork where it's just they have just a deep knowledge of the game that just has always made me such a big fan of their style. And I'm just so glad that we're going to be able to see them on a world stage against some of the best teams in the world.
Yeah, you know what? These guys are exactly who I was hoping to get up there on a podium, because the reality is for Gambit's playstyle, this super slow defaulty play. They bait you into taking fights on their terms, on their turf. Their utility on Nats is actually just sickeningly good. That guy can solo hold a site using his cages for 7 different purposes all at once. The man is about as close as we're going to get to a Doctor Strange in this reality. Is unreal. I've really enjoyed watching Gambit. I've enjoyed breaking down some of their plays. Casting them is damn fun, even though they play a slow round and a lot of their pushes are going to come in at like 30-40 seconds left. The way that they work the map and the way that they really control and pressure opponents,
build up.
and also they do that, and a lot of teams do, but they do it while minimizing risk. They don't give away any sort, like when they're in 5v3s, they don't start pushing like lunatics. They don't give opportunities away to get back into a round. So it's very easy to lose the advantage versus these guys. It's very easy to give an advantage to them, and it's very hard to get back into a round against them, because they will literally turtle in, play the clock, let you push into their angles, have their crossfires. They are patient. And I think, as you said, right, Nats really shows that. I've seen the dude get aces, and he's just
dude, the ace clutch. Yeah. What was it? It was a 2v5, and like his teammates only just rocking up to the site. And what's he doing? Oh, he just bodied everything. And it was the speed of that he got those kills. It was like bop, 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 bop. And I'm thinking, you could literally just blink and you miss that. What on
backside C on Haven? It's
insane.
Dude had a sheriff, got pushed by 3 guys. I don't think he even had. No, he didn't have shields. He had his utility, but he hadn't put any of it down because it was a full eco round. He just happened to buy a sheriff because he had enough credits, and he literally killed all 3 of them. They peeked in, headshot, and then into the body for the last one. It was gorgeous, and during that whole moment, it looked like he was attending a funeral. The guy was just, he was cold.
And I mean, right now we're talking about Nets, right? And like maybe a few months ago we were talked about Defo. The thing is that with this team, everybody is really good. And what I like about their strategies too is that when you have a lot of these EMEA teams that they have this same similar play style, a lot of these teams typically tend to highlight an individual within that. With Gambit, they don't highlight anybody because they all understand their strategies, their role within the team. And I think that shows just a deep knowledge of the game in general, because this kind of brings back to that, I wouldn't say Counter-Strike, you know, obviously, but like in Counter-Strike, there's this like utility and all these things. So it's kind of one of these things that if you understand your role, regardless of what utility you have, regardless of what agent you're playing, we as a team understand how to accomplish what we want to within the game. So I think that that's what takes them over the edge as being just a complete team, especially within their strategies. And that I think starts with not essentially highlighting someone the majority of the times or within their strategies on like a, you know, every round basis.
And you also got to think, right, when it comes to Gambit, you look at what they did with their CS team as an example, taking it from this youngster team of all young players coming up, and even their game plan is very like focused on the preparation, the knowing, the trusting each other. And you can kind of see that as an organization, Gambit applying the same points to all of their divisions and finding success with it. Remember, this is not the biggest team as in an organization within the CIS region, but it is dominating across multiple games, and it's found some formula. It's got a very good team house. They've got players with the right mentality who don't care about boot camping for long weeks on end, which we know, we've all seen it, right? Other players, oh, boot camp was long, it was 3 weeks or something. These guys understand that this grind can pay off for them to be living a dream life, you know, and they're ready to commit to it.
No, and big shout out to the management there, like Lex, Constantine, Johan, like all these guys, like I competed against them. You know, like these guys are legends. And the way that, at least just to like briefly touch on it, the way that they played individually, they're one of those teams that it was a challenge to go up against, because I was a very aggressive player and I like to op, and I kind of did those cNed type things when I played, and just seeing their style coming into the game and kind of bringing their different unique style, like it was amazing, because seeing and then just having that being a part of your management and ownership, like it's just going to trickle down, you know what I'm saying? So like they understand what it's like and they're going to build this for success. So I've always been a fan of it, and for me it's one of these things that I think that they're going to be a mainstay, because if they have any moment that they're not having this kind of success, they're going to make whatever necessary change to get to that. So they'll be like the G2 or Liquid of that region.
And they also are not a team where I would say they will give up on players early. They'll look at fixing what's in within the team before making like a knee-jerk reaction. I think some teams maybe change where they could give a player some more time or try and work with them. I look at Gambit as one that like figures it out as the unit rather than just like, oh, get rid of this player, try bring another player in, you know? So yeah, it's a different style coming into it. We're on to our final two teams, and we're going to start with our second place here, Mitch, on 100 Thieves. Now, we mentioned them on the previous show, on the preview show that we were doing, about a team that it was time for them to shine, right? We're seeing some of the CS players that I know and love come through and see what they could do. Well, they did come through incredibly strong up until the very end, but they went up obviously against Sentinels. Yeah,
I mean, the reality is you look at these guys, you've got so much experience, and one of the biggest advantages that these guys and the majority of North America has coming into Berlin is the fact that they've all competed at a top level in another esport. They've played LANs before. They've played LANs with big ass crowds. Now they're going to be in there. Not even going to be a crowd, more than likely. So they're just going to be sitting down, playing a little bit of Valorant, and there's their opponents across there. They're completely used to that. EU, SEA, are these guys? Not really, certainly not on the same caliber of what they're about to experience. I guarantee for a lot of players going from LATAM, going in from SEA, just meeting the likes of a Steel, a Hiko, an Ethan, Nitro, any of these boys, it would blow their mind. They'll be hyped up just to meet them.
Watching them as kids.
Imagine what it's like to sit across from them and play them. It's going to add an extra level of shakiness to you that you won't experience as a North American team.
I'm going to just ask you, like, you have experience of this. You never played on a LAN, never played at a big event, and then you got thrown into that show match with a bunch of pros wrecking on you, you know? How was that
really?
For you? Was it nerve-wracking?
Oh, was it 1.15 HLTV rating, I think I have, sir. So I wouldn't say it wrecking
this
on
man
me.
got carried.
I was having fun.
Yeah. He got carried.
Let's just have a look. Sergey, you know, the guy that was just at the major final right before that event, and then what was it? Both 1v1s against him I won? I mean, I don't know, dude. I don't want to say I'm awesome, but I mean, if I was playing Berlin,
everyone watching, just watch Mitch's stream, you'll see how bad he is. But my point I was going on to with this, Mitch, is that like you understand, right? You understand that like even that was just a show match for you, but the players you're around, you feel that pressure, you feel that stress.
Oh yeah, dude. Oh yeah, and it wasn't for me because obviously, you know, we We won 16-4. It wasn't too much pressure after the first couple of rounds, but what you did get was that all of your emotions are elevated to another level. I remember I got like a 2K. It was a small enough thing. And I just remember Maniac turning to me and going, yeah. And I'm like, yeah, like you're just losing your mind. And then everyone's like, dude, it was an eco. Calm down. You're like, I won. Yeah. Like, it doesn't matter. Everything is like 100 times more extreme. But that also means when you go down 10-0, when you're at that negative end, hey, we should get Dinko on, ask him about it. When you're at that negative end of the stick, it means it's going to feel a lot worse than your games do online, than that qualifier game where you struggled to keep it together, because now all of a sudden your teammates are all around you, which can help a lot of the time, but it's all brand new experiences, and that's pretty scary.
Yeah, I mean, it's like that starstruck effect, you know, you're going to go against like your hero and stuff like that. And the unfortunate part about that is we play to win. That means win the game. Yeah. But if I just get a kill on you and you claim that as a victory, I mean, you kind of cut yourself short, right? So the mentality needs to be like, I want to beat these guys, not just kill these guys or get like a cool clip against them, you know. So and the thing with 100 Thieves too is like, this is the team, like obviously they're not the best team because of Sentinels, but this is a team that easily has the most experience across the board in our region. And they won first strike. I mean, they did it in great fashion as far as like how they've been able to put this roster together, consistently build out, you know, like the organization has been doing a great job of building out certain things, like maybe a staff, getting them boot camped out in Dallas for have like more efficient ping during this qualifier, because just like the whole server location situation here in A is kind of funky since we don't have a Colorado, you know. So I mean, that's why you saw most teams just go all out and go to Dallas. And I think that this is something that you see that these guys, like when if they turn it up and they mean business, I mean, these guys are going to be very dangerous. So I'm actually curious to kind of see how, like, where they get situated in the groups in the bracket. But I think that 100 Thieves will have a deep run in Berlin. And this is going to be one of these games, like you guys have been saying, that basically there's only going to be a handful of teams out there that don't care who they're going up against. But a lot of teams will have those nerve factor. And I think 100 Thieves and Sentinels as well, they're the ones that will have that scare factor, and other teams just need to kind of get over that and understand that, you know, that they're the same as you and me, and, you know, you could be that person in a few years if you just have a different mentality.
Just another player to shoot and aim at. That's what you got to think about. And when we talk about scary teams, well, there is no team scarier than Sentinels. They are again in first place, and rightly so, because they came through. And okay, this is the funny thing, Mitch. Like, obviously they dropped the one series and everyone like loses their minds. And that's what I love about this, is like, when I come back to this, people just don't understand the game. You can at any point just lose a game, right? You can have an off day, you can not be feeling so good. And yeah, if you're the best team in the world, maybe it's not acceptable, but it's how you bounce back from it. And well, they do what they do best. Sentinels then just go on a rampage again.
Yeah, I think Sentinels kind of prove why 100 Thieves and Envy aren't really going to be a problem for European EMEA teams. The fact that they're able to so easily dispatch everybody else in the region. And then, you know, you've got the EMEA teams who were able to challenge them so close last time, not even making it. So, yeah, I mean, Sentinels, you have to give it to them because of the last event that they were at, because they're still dominating NA. I mean, really, they're probably edging up to the top 5.
God, help me. Please help me.
Yeah, look, I mean, we'll just say this. Sentinels, they are the best team in the world by far. They are the gatekeepers. Until someone beats them multiple times and wins that tournament, I'm not even going to let them think that they're going to be in the first place, you know? So,
Mitch, I am from Europe, right? And I can semi-agree with you on some parts, but I mean, like, even
he's loving, man.
Say, for example, right? We get to Berlin and Sentinels finish second. It doesn't matter, the team that beat them is not going to be the number one team in the world, because you need to see a little bit more from it, right? One series doesn't define it in my eyes when you look at it. You look at the overall points of what they've done. If they lose a couple of times to it and they start to fall off, then yeah, cool, you can have that conversation. But I mean, realistically, you're watching the games, mate. It's going to take a hell of a lot for an EU, EMEA team to be able to challenge Sentinels right now.
Yeah. I think Gambit's default, like on a serious note, I actually think Gambit will beat them. I think that their default is going to really throw a wrench in the works. But the reality is, man, I mean, that's if they make it out of groups.
That's for a different conversation. Even I think he might be onto something there, and that's like a deeper level thinking conversation. But I might give him a slight bit, but that's because of the fact that maybe NA teams don't really, you know, we get kind of bored playing against teams that like to exec with 15 seconds left, you know?
Well, we'll have that conversation on the next preview show, most likely, boys, because we'll see the groups by that point and understand what's going down. But we are done. We've got our top 10 for as we think it is now. For all of you guys watching at home, make sure you check it out. If you've got some differentiating opinions, then drop us a comment. Let us know. You guys love to complain about these things over and over again, and we like to have a back and forth battle with you on it all. But we'll be back with another show real soon. Thank you for kicking it with us, and we'll see you on the next episode.